Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting this November 14th, 2017. We have 6 of 7 Planning Commissioners in attendance, missing Kelvin Green this evening. We extend a hearty welcome to all those that have come out to the meeting and hope you find this meeting enjoyable, and we look forward to hearing from you if you so desire to speak in public comment section later. Thank you for participating in the public process. We acknowledge Boy Scouts here. Thank you for being here and learning more about our freedom and how a city is run. The first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of minutes from October 17th, 2017. Commissioner Quinney.
I move to approve the minutes from October 17th.
Commissioner Sikoski.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Quinney and a second from Commissioner Sikoski. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously 6-0, which brings us to our first public hearing this evening. Farm Bureau Insurance, 8133 South Redwood Road, conditional use permit for office use, CCR zone, J&B Johnson Properties. Jeremiah Johnson is the applicant. Please feel free to come forward and present your application this evening.
Hello, so I'm Jeremiah Johnson with Farm Bureau Insurance, and I'm purchasing the building across the road from you guys, actually, 8133, and just want to use it for my insurance office. It looks like it's already, I've submitted everything, and I've got the conditional approval. I just have to come, I guess, to you guys. So,
To make it formal and finalized.
final, yeah.
Thank you. You're already in the location.
Just started, barely. Just, actually just barely kind of finishing things up. We're still doing a few things, but yeah.
Great.
So,
Well, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? We'll reserve some time for you if you have anything you'd like to address after the public comment section.
okay, thanks.
Thanks very much. And for the city, we have Ms. Elgin presenting, correct? Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. The application regards a parcel that is 0.4 acres in area. It's located 200 feet south of the tracks line on Redwood Road, like he said, just down the street from us. It consists of a commercial building and a portion of Bingham Creek that is fenced in. In the past, the commercial building has been used as a malt shop, a karate studio, a fast food restaurant, retail, and a barber shop. So it's had a lot of different uses already. The applicant, as he mentioned, is requesting a conditional use permit to allow an office to go into that existing commercial building. You skipped ahead a little too fast. Sorry. Okay, the parcel is located in the CCR zone, the City Center Residential Zone, and it's located in the general plan designated area for transit-oriented development. It's completely surrounded by CCR zones with some public facilities, including us to the northwest. To the south, it's got commercial and residential. The municipal code defines the city center residential district to have a mixture of uses that includes office, and the general plan also states that transit-oriented developments should include diverse and complementary uses, which include professional services. It meets all of the city standard requirements for the use, meets all of the city standard requirements for acceptance, so staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit for Farm Bureau Insurance.
Thank you, Ms. Elgin. Any questions for staff this evening? Seeing none, we'll open the public comment section. If anyone would like to speak on this item, please feel free to come forward to the podium at this time. And we'll close the public comment section and bring it back to discussion among the planning commissioners. Commissioner Luthi,
I'd like to make a motion.
please.
I move that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use for the Farm Bureau Insurance located at 8133 South Redwood Road in the CCR zone, subject to conditions 1 and 2.
Commissioner Hanson.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Luthi and a second by Commissioner Hanson. Any discussion to the motion? Commissioner Sikoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with doing this, but I think it's important to bring up that the process is to have the conditional use permit in place before someone moves into the building. So for future, anybody out there that's thinking of starting a business, it's better to put the cart before the horse. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments?
Horse before the cart.
Horse before the cart, cart before the horse. Just so long as there's a horse in a cart, at least. But no, true, ideally everything would be in chronological order, but we're grateful that things are being brought into compliance at this time. Thank you for that effort. Any other discussion? Let's vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously 6-0. Thank you for doing business in West Jordan, and best wishes to you. Our next item on the agenda is a Sycamores subdivision, 7049 West, 7800 South, preliminary subdivision plat, 20 lots on 7.28 acres in an R110F zone. Urban Chase Property Management, Greg Hughes and Mark Garza are the applicants. If you would like to come forward and present, please. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. I give you a brief description, and then as the staff gives their report, we have public comment. If there are questions that need to be answered, I would be happy to do that and have a good dialogue here tonight. This is a parcel that the city zoned in surplus. It was city property. That zoning, I believe, took place in August of 2016. The zoning that the city put on the a little more than 7 acres was an R110 zone, and requiring at least a minimum of 10,000 square foot lots, and an F-sized home, which that sized home, it's a Rambler. You're looking at the 3,400 square feet minimum area for the home, and if it's a multi-story home, at least 3,300 square feet. Those F-sized homes are typically on 12,000 square foot lots, and as we put this, as Urban Chase made our proposal and the city accepted it, we have complied. I think you'll hear from staff with the zone. However, our smallest lot is just a little over 10,000 square feet. Our largest lot, it's a little deceiving, it's 34,000 square feet, but there's a slope. But the average lot size is 14,700 square feet, so it's larger than the 10,000 square foot minimum for those lots. There are 61 acres of open space in that area, and it was the city's decision to rezone, advertise, and make available these just over 7 acres, or just under 8 acres, that we are presenting to for your consideration tonight. So with that, I will leave the staff for its report, and if there are public comments and questions, I would be happy to address them.
Thanks very much. Any questions for the applicant at this time? We'll reserve time for you later in the meeting. Thank you. And Ms. Elgin, you have this item as well.
Yes. This application regards a parcel that is 7.93 acres in area. It's located west of Bacchus Highway between 7,800 and 8,200 South. As the applicant mentioned, in 2016, it was rezoned to R110F and general plan designated to medium density residential. It's surrounded to the west, the north, and the east by open space, and to the south directly to the south by multifamily housing, multifamily residential. The applicant is requesting preliminary subdivision approval to create 20 lots, which range from 10,090 square feet to 34,577 square feet. The proposed subdivision complies with all of the zoning and subdivision regulations, and therefore staff recommends approval of the preliminary subdivision plat.
Thank you, Ms. Elgin. Any questions for staff this evening? We will open up the item to public comment. If anyone would like to speak, please feel free to come forward. You'll have 3 minutes as an individual or 5 minutes if you're representing a group. Way to give in to peer pressure. Nice job.
He drew a longer straw. I'm Ray Van Wagoner. I live in the Sycamores neighborhood. And this was approved despite our residents' efforts to stop it. We had a pretty good showing. And it was also approved despite the commission's recommendation not to approve it. You see the green in the gully there? This is a floodplain. I don't know why we would build houses in the middle of a gully. Also, I have some questions for the planner, if I could. What's our park acres per 1,000 people?
Just keep your comments addressed to the planning commission. You can discuss anything with staff tomorrow. You can get a hold of her, but just talk to the planning commission.
Yeah, and we'll definitely make sure it's addressed.
To my point, are we making sure that we're not selling park land off when we're needing it in the future? Are we on par with other cities? My father-in-law's a planning zoning person for 40 years, Glenn Graham. He said the city wasn't very bright for selling off 3 park parcels. Cities don't sell off land, especially to develop houses. Houses are a drag on a city. If we are short on money, commercial would be a much better route to go. Anyway, Scott has some other issues to address about the promises that were made by the mayor and the commission when this was approved, despite our efforts to stop it.
Great, thank you, sir. Oh, did we get your name for the public record? Oh, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Van Wagner.
Citizen.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for your time. My name is Scott Hardy, also a resident of the Sycamores. In the City Council meeting, August 24th of 2016, many of us Sycamores residents appeared before the City Council and shared our thoughts and concerns about the surplusing the land and rezoning the land. We've since digested the fact that it's going to happen, so we're satisfied with the fact that it's going to happen. We're pleased to hear that the lots sizes will be bigger than what was initially even indicated. Initially concerned that it was approved at 6.5 acres, and then the notice we got was grew to 7.28 acres, and now tonight it's 7.93 acres. I don't think we're super concerned about that because the lot sizes are bigger, which enhances the value of our area. One thing I just want to bring to your attention, and I don't know if it's appropriate to pass these up to the members. Is that okay?
Yes, please feel free to give them to Mr. Gardner. Thank you for preparing that.
So what you'll see there is an aerial view of, a more zoomed in aerial view of the yellow subject parcel. And I've outlined that in red as the site that is designated to be developed. If I can just read to you as you're looking at that, to the west of the red line of the parcel to be developed is in green, and I've labeled that park. If I can read to you what Mayor Rolfe conceded, I guess, in the meeting dated August 24th, 2016. This is Mayor Rolfe from the minutes. Mayor Rolfe wished to sell the property in question, but stated that he also wished to ensure that the city preserve a park area to the west of any future development, and that such a requirement should be made condition of the sale. I'm not privy to any purchase contract, so I don't know if that term is in the purchase contract, but I would urge the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to the City Council that Mayor Rolfe and the City Council adhere to what he wanted done, which was to ensure that this park be put in. They're removing nearly 8 acres of open space in the Sycamores. We're just asking for some green space. We're not even asking for a playground. We have 2 parks in the Sycamores, but they're very small in size. So small, in fact, that you can't have a soccer game, you can't play football, you can't play ultimate frisbee. It's not big enough to accommodate that. You see on the map, that green space, we just want it to be graded. We want grass and irrigation and maybe a few trees on the west to give some shade. We just want a place so our neighborhood kids can go out and play. So we would encourage you to please make that recommendation to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else?
Hello, I'm Ginger Johnson. I'm also a homeowner now in the cottages at the Sycamores, which will align this subdivision. And the questions that I had also coincide with the slope and, living there and seeing that that was a wash where all of the water is going to reside. In the documentation in Finding C, it says that the builder will be increasing the capacity of the basin to address stormwater runoff. And seeing that we already have a basin there on the other side of the new Sycamore Drive, I'm curious to have the builder speak to that and give some more information about how they're planning on increasing the capacity of that basin where it's already built out and developed.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? Seeing no further comment, we'll close the public testimony section and go back to asking our city staff if they, before we have the applicant up to come up, just to clarify on, let's see, the floodplain issue being in the gully with the basin. Anything to clarify on that, Mr. Nelson, with engineering, from an engineering standpoint?
It's not a designated floodplain by FEMA. It's not on our maps as a floodplain. But there is a wash that runs through that entire area. It's called Clay Hollow Wash. There's several detention basin areas within that open space area. There's a channel that runs through there. It carries traditionally water out of those hills that pass through the city and end up in the Jordan River.
Great, thank you, Mr. Nelson. And then Ms. Elgin, with the surplus land, it's the staff's recommendation that this fits within the general plan?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Gardner, for the park, would you like to speak toward the park issue at this time?
I'm not aware of anything in the purchase contract, but that's more the city attorney's office would review those, but I don't. That would be more of a city council action. It looked like the map that was provided, the park area was outside the surplus property, and so if the city council so deemed it, they could, if they wanted to spend the money, they could certainly build an improved park there, but it's not part of this sale of property. So
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's outside of the boundaries of this development. So.
Well, thank you. I just want to make sure we always address the items that are brought up by concerned residents regarding the items that are before us so that we take everything into consideration. And would the applicant like to come up and address items that were mentioned in the public comment section to clarify your position?
Thank you. I do appreciate the questions. So it's been touched on. There are detention basins along the open space area here. The last one, I don't have a pointer, but
right on the podium. There you go.
I don't have a pointer. I'm just going to work this thing. Oh, what did I do? Let's see. Which button is it? The gray one? All right. So I'm told that we have one of the basins, detention basins, that is here, and then it is piped along this area. Also, I wanted to mention that as this has grown, it was mentioned that this area it has changed, it's flexed as we have looked to get the plat approved and working with staff. Some of the requirements of moving this area closer to the slope, the property line, was to accommodate the utilities as we discover where the utilities were and to keep that where it needed to be and where the plat was worked on. We moved that further south, this border's further south, but it was all to accommodate the utilities. So there is a utility that runs where the basin is, or the detention basin is, and goes this way. The question of how this would be, how we would slope this way and use a retention basin in this area, there is a cul-de-sac that this area here is being developed. There's a cul-de-sac that is being developed here, and it is going to eat into a portion of the city's existing detention basin. Instead of the city having to bear any cost of changing that or adjusting it, as we work together and cooperate, we are going to move this further this way and accommodate for what is happening here, over here further south, and also connect with our proposal, our plan, our plat. So that's how we anticipate doing that. And I think those were the notes that I wrote down for the questions that were asked. If the council has any questions, or commission has any questions that you have to answer, any questions you might have.
Commissioner Sikoski.
Thank you. This was brought up in 2016 as one of the issues that was kind of against the development. I know in 2007 there was the Barneys Canyon mine spill where arsenic was washed down this gully from the Barneys Canyon mine up above. And the concern was brought up back then that if we develop this property and something like that were to happen in the future, you know, right now where it was, we all received, this whole neighborhood received notices to stay away from that gully until it was cleaned up. I'm just curious if you guys have worked with Kennecott with these detention basins, and is there a plan in place for, there is potential for another wash like that, and if that happens, I'm concerned that people living in this gully would receive all of that arsenic.
So to answer that question, we're working closely with staff. The issues that you brought up, we imagine are issues that as we look at how we're going to appropriately and as per the city's standard drain that area, that the city would expect us to do it appropriately. And so we're working with staff to make sure that we're winning our approvals and that this is something that we'll be able to ultimately secure approval for and see it done. But in terms of what the specificity of how that would drain and if the retention basins that we're identifying and the ones that exist are adequate, we work closely with the city manager or engineer and would hope that we're working together to mitigate whatever issues there'd be.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. I have a question for you, or not a question, I have something to say. But Nate, would we be watching that really closely, that was that drain off from Barneys Canyon, that it is cleared up and we're not putting people in danger with something like that?
Yeah, several years ago, and I couldn't quote the exact year, it's probably about 5 years ago, and I think that's what Commissioner Sikoski was referring to. There was a cleanup project. Kennecott obtained a permit from the city to go in. They hauled out numerous loads of soil from that channel. They hauled out all of the old sediments and deposits along that stream channel. They re-armored the channel with riprap, rock lining and that sort of thing, and had everything tested and everything passed to meet standards for city and residential living and that sort of thing, which is the highest standard. I'm not aware of the potential for more stuff coming down that wasn't addressed in any of the reports that I've read. That's something we'll have to look into.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to congratulate you on keeping the size of lots that you are proposing. We need these in West Jordan, and so I'm glad to see that that's what you're bringing forward.
Thank you. We're pretty excited about it too. As we work together, we realized that in the way the purchase contract was written, it did give us the flexibility to make sure that what we planned here wouldn't just put a round peg in a square hole, but we could really work together to come up with the best product. And I really think that's what we have here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? I think that's it, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll bring it back to deliberation, leading to a possible motion among the commission members. Commissioner Sikoski.
I'll start, and I'll just share my thoughts. I agree with what the Sycamores residents have said. I'm a Sycamores resident. And so obviously I have a vested interest in this property, and I'm glad to see that the lots are larger. I'm glad to see that it's not just going to be a quick slapdash neighborhood. But my concerns are still with that spill. And I know that we don't have all the data, but I lived through all the cleanup, and it was a big process, and I remember getting a letter that says I can't even walk my dog down there. So that concerns me a little bit, and that's why I voted against this before. And, you know, it's nothing against the developers or any of that, you know, but I do feel that it's my duty to try to protect the citizens of West Jordan's health, safety, and I still don't like the subdivision here. And I know that it's already been rezoned, and that's not my deal tonight. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. I do like what they're bringing to the table, though.
No, good point, Commissioner Sikoski. That a lot of times the things that we are looking at, and even in the public comment section, understandably, residents might not know exactly what the scope is that we are able to consider and recommend to City Council, and certain things are outside of the parameters of what we're legally able to decide. So, thank you. Any other comments or a potential motion? Commissioner Quinney.
Nobody else seems to be jumping up for this one, so I'll do it. Based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission approve the preliminary subdivision plat for the Sycamores on 7.93 acres and containing 20 lots and one parcel located at 7049 West and 7800 South.
Commissioner Hanson.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Quinney and a second by Commissioner Hanson. Discussion of the motion, starting with Commissioner Sikoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it might be prudent to put something in the motion that would also recommend that the City Council take into consideration the comments made by the citizens about that park section that they would like to the west.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Gardner.
This won't be going to the city council, but we'll pass that information on. So this is the approval of the planning commission tonight.
That's right.
And so, but we'll make sure that the city council hears that issue about the park.
Thank you, as well as the very concerning potential of contamination. If you could please pass that along, Mr. Gardner, both of those items. Thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd appreciate you passing that on, because if the mayor did indicate to the residents surrounding this that there would be a park, even though it's not within this development and not up to the developers to do, the residents there were told there would be a park by our mayor. And so I think that they should kind of look at that and consider that, although it would be an expense to the city. And then also the cleanup on Clay Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? So we don't have an amended motion, correct? Commissioner Sikoski?
No amendment to the motion, but the information is going to be passed, so I feel good with that.
Thank you. Let's vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously 6-0. Which brings us to the next item on the agenda, Classical Ballet Conservatory, 1355 West, 8120 South, conditional use permit for personal instruction service in an M1 zone. Classical Ballet Conservatory, Elise Schell is the applicant. And you're already here.
I am.
Way to be on point.
Much less nervous
Nice work.
now. I was nervous one of them were going to come up, and I guess there's still that chance. But I am leasing Suite 1, is that how it's referred to? Suite 1 of this building. This building is owned by GMG. It's the sprinkler supply company, owned by Gary and Mike Canning. Mike Canning, Gary, I don't know Gary's last name. Gary, the wonderful owner of Sprinkler Supply Company. My business is previously at Gardner Village. I outgrew that location, and we had a lot of issues with conflict of interest on festivals and how a ballet studio could be involved in Witch Fest, which is hard, and they can't. So I looked for almost a year for a place. There is a big change in kind of dance studios recently that everyone's going more towards this industrial area. I've taught at quite a few locations in Utah County and up in Davis County where the studios have moved to more industrial zones because of the ceiling height. Dance studios need that ability to have a male put a female above his head, and that requires 12 to 14 foot ceilings, which is very hard to find in commercial zoned areas. And so most of the places that I've taught at previously are in these zones. I found this particular location. I made sure I was looking for a place that had the ceiling height, the square footage, the available parking, but more importantly, most of my business is a drop-off pickup situation. And this particular building, the 8120 road, is actually a U that goes all the way through and hooks onto 13th West on both ends. And so the majority of my clientele then would be coming in from the, I know it doesn't show on this, but the road there, 8040 South. So the majority of my clientele would be coming in from 8040 South, coming around, dropping off their children right there at the curve, so they walk in on the grass where it's safe, and then they would then be picked up from that same location and then taken home. I made sure that it was in an area that didn't have a lot of traffic, so that my younger students, even though they are being brought to class by their parents, still it would be in an environment where my parents felt like they were safe, especially coming from Gardner Village, which was this quaint, cute, adorable place. I didn't want it to feel like, and now let's go somewhere scary. So as far as the cart before the horse goes, being a leasee, my cart was way out of my control for a while, and I kept so nicely asking the owners of the building for affidavits and maps. And as you can see from the previous slide, I eventually just made my own map, and I'm not very good at it. But so that it was at least most of everything that they were asking for. And so I am here before the commission to get my ducks in the row that they should have been in over the summer, but I am officially making it good because my ballet OCD mind can't handle not being where I need to be. So I've never done this before, but I put this before you, and thank you. Is that all?
Great. Thank you for being on point, Ms. Schell. That's wonderful. So are there any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Luthi.
I do. I think that several dance companies have a bad reputation of not being a good neighbor for the exact reasons you talked about, dropping off and picking up and the areas around them. Have you talked with the surrounding businesses and discussed with them the amount of people that will be coming and going from your facility so that it doesn't impact their businesses?
Yeah. One of the best things about this location is that my neighbor to the south, the landscape company, and the neighbor that shares the parking lot with me, both of them have businesses that go from 7 to 4, and my business hours are predominantly from 4:15 to 9:15 at night. And so that actually helps out quite a bit because we rarely share the parking lot. There's 2 times a week where we do share the parking lot, and it's for an hour and a half on Tuesday mornings and Wednesday mornings. It was something that I put before the owners of the property with Mike, and I asked him to talk to the landscape company and to the car detailing company across the street from me. And I said, I don't want to be in here if it's going to cause issues. And he assured me that he had talked to them and that they both were okay with it as long as I had sufficient sound dampening materials in my walls. And luckily, being a classical ballet studio, our music is predominantly piano music, and we rarely get to those really loud
Pumping parties.
Yeah. The ballet studio is much more conservative. It's more disciplined. It's less, we would never be having big parties there or being ruckus, because the whole concept is teaching etiquette and teaching discipline. And so that's something that I really work on with my students and make sure that they are good neighbors and that the parents are respectful. But the majority of the time, we rarely even come in contact with the neighbors because of the differences in business hours.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you for your question.
Commissioner Sikoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, you'd indicated that they come around 80-40 and then they end up on the curb there on the main road. Do you have someone outside watching the kids while they go from vehicle to building to vehicle?
We do. Those students are mostly older students. That would be students that are ages 8 to 18. Our youngest students are almost always brought in with their parents. Their parents wait in our lobby, and then they are taken back out to their car with their parents. Anytime that there's any sort of a child pass-off, that drop-off pickup, there are teachers that are there watching, making sure that the kids are being safe as they come in and as they exit. Obviously, it would be terrible for business if something were to happen to a child, but also just making sure that as teachers, they have that personal attention to the kids. That's really important. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Michelle, what are your plans for performances or recitals? Understandably, through the week, the attendance would be scattered, but then you'd have many grandparents and parents and friends and neighbors there at one time. What is your plan for events such as those?
Well, this facility is not large enough, nor is it set up to be a performance venue. Right now, my performances are done. Riverton has a community center with a nice side stage, which I do my Christmas performance there. My end-of-year recital is done usually at high schools and places that have large stages. I saw a sign that West Jordan is building a stage, and so I do plan on having recitals there in the future, because that would be such a wonderful thing to be able to have my West Jordan studio perform in West Jordan. So no performances are done here. They're all done at performance venues.
Great, thank you, because that makes a big consideration on parking and drop-off, pick-up, all that. Thank you. Any other questions?
I think we've done it.
We'll reserve some time for you if needed later.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this is being presented by Mr. Page.
Thank you, Chair. I believe most of the issues have been presented accurately. This is an M1 zone, and we've categorized this proposed use as a classical ballet studio as a personal instructional service is the closest fit that we can find in our existing code, which is a conditional use permit. As stated, it appears like the parking is adequate with the existing proposed use for this business and the surrounding businesses. But staff's concern is, should business hours change for this business or as adjacent properties, or if the businesses change that are next to this proposed dance studio, there could be a potential for some conflict of parking. Personal instructional services requires about 16 parking stalls per gross floor area of this proposal. There's only 8 currently that are at least painted. There could be a possibility of some parking in the back or the south portion of the lot, but there is a gate that looks like it could be locked. So that would be a consideration that would need to be talked about, as if parking would be or could be allowed in that back area, and if so, how much and at what times would it be available. I believe the suggestion of designating a couple of stalls just for pickup and drop off was a great suggestion. There's also a requirement in our code that one of the parking stalls be designated as handicapped accessible. So when I visited the site, I met one of the employees of the landscape office supply, and he had no problem with the proposed use in the building. It was pretty docile in the area. Of course, it was middle of the day. So based on the current uses of the area, it seems like it's a reasonable use of the facility. But should there be more students, should there be more classes, should there be more overlapping classes, those are questions that could make the parking become unmanageable or unfair for the adjacent property owners.
Well, great. Thank you, Mr. Page. And is there any talk among City Council or staff on, as Ms. Schell mentioned, it seems like more businesses that are traditionally non-industrial are going in industrial areas where the buildings and the parking and the ingress and egress aren't necessarily set up to be conducive to that kind of a business operation. Is there anything in the works of trying to reconfigure that?
No, not at this point.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any questions for staff? Without any questions, we'll open up for public discussion. Would anyone like to speak on this item this evening? Seeing none, we'll close that section and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Luthi, I know you and I mentioned in the pre-meeting a concern, and I think Ms. Schell addressed a lot of them, as well as Mr. Page. I'm a big lover of the arts, and as such, my daughter's been in dance classes, and we've been in industrial areas where a lot of concerns on parking and safety and traffic flow and the building's use and the business being operated impacting other adjacent businesses can be an issue. But I think in this circumstance, a lot of that has been mitigated. And any thoughts, Commissioner Luthi?
No, I think that she answered my question, and again, there's nobody here to say any differently, so I feel like I'm fine on my end.
And Mr. Gary loves her, so I think that's over that. Commissioner Sikorsky.
Thank you. I know the traditional model for your business so far has been to drop off at the curb, but I would very much feel much more comfortable if we had you designate a parking stall with a permanent sign that would state that this is a no parking area, it's for pickup and drop off only. That would allow, something close to the door where parents could pull up and have ready access to a place to drop their children off. I just don't feel like dropping off at the curb on a busy road. Even if it's not a busy road, the time of day that you're doing business is either dark or darkening for most of the year, and I just see some potential problems with safety for that. So I'd feel really comfortable if we could add that as one of the requirements for this conditional use permit.
Great, good comment. And then as Michelle mentioned, the students would potentially be walking across the grass. I can see a problem with landscaping there. Back and forth, back and forth. Would there be any, I don't know of any alternative though, then I guess they could pull up a little farther into the driveway area. But again, that's just a function of this not being made for this type of use from the beginning. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's, a valid point, but I feel like if we require the sign and parents use that parking place, then it kind of eliminates the need for some type of walkway. Also with snow and weather and things like that, the more ready access you have to the building, the better. So,
well, and that's a good point too, where snow and ice need to be cleared off pavement, but then what do you do with the landscaped area?
Right.
Walking across.
Exactly. And also, we've had higher snow years where we get snow plows that come through and they push a big berm of snow up to the side there. So I think that's mitigated through the condition that I would support requiring.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Luthi.
I like your thought process. I just don't think it's very practical. You're not going to have one person dropping off at a time. You're going to have 20 people dropping off at a time, and there's no way those parents are going to wait for that one accessible stall to be available. They're going to pull up that drive and they're going to back it right onto the street. So unless you're trying to say that as condition of use, we need to put a sidewalk in along the roadway that goes all the way to the building, I don't think it's practical. I don't think anyone's going to use that. It's not a one-person drop-off or a difference in time. They're all coming at the same time. Then they're leaving, and the next class is starting all at the same time. That's my concern with dance studios, is that the kids that are leaving and the kids that are coming are happening all at the same time. So even if your class has 10, now you're dealing with 20 different vehicles all trying to come at the same time, and it backs it up. I mean, that whole area is going to be backed up. Those that can pull into a stall will do that, for sure. But you see what I'm saying? And that's just for one class. Now, if you're having multiple classes, now you've got double that amount. I don't see that working out so well.
And as was mentioned with the very young students, parents would park and go in. So there might not be the adequate parking right there, but the adjacent property that was mentioned where people can park, that might mitigate that. But you're right, the pickup drop-off continues to be a situation that we might need to discuss more. Commissioner Sikorsky, did you have anything else?
Yes. I was just going to say that I agree with all of your comments, Commissioner Luthi. The problem is we're trying to fit something that doesn't work into something that doesn't work, you know? I mean, the building is great. It's the traffic flow that's the problem. And I feel like even though it may not be ideal, by putting a sign up and leaving one stall where someone can't park, it at least allows for an available drop-off position. And yes, there may be a ton of parents that come all at once, but where you have those parents that linger for the younger kids, you're still going to have a stall available for a turnaround.
Commissioner Luthi.
Can I ask the question to the applicant of how many people are coming and going at one period in time? What kind of actual quantity of people are we talking about here at your studio?
I think we've got enough questions to ask Ms. Schell. I move that we suspend the rules. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We're suspending the rules so that you can give us more information. Ms. Schell, can you help us with the specific idea of...
Yeah. So I think I can answer most of what's been talked about.
Great.
I grew up at a studio that didn't have enough parking. It just straight didn't have enough parking. We had 9 parking spaces total for a studio that had 700 students. And so I totally understand that idea of the battle to get in the parking lot, and there were so many accidents, it was just a nightmare. So one thing that I do is that my younger classes cap off at 8. So there's only 8 students, and there's only one class that happens at a time with my younger classes, and I do stagger the classes. I give a 10-minute buffer between the end of one class and the start of the next. And that does help quite a bit with the congestion, not only in the parking lot, but also within my building as kids are coming and going out of the dressing room. In the evening, for the evening classes, almost all of them right now are drop-off. I have 2 students that can currently drive. But other than that, it's parents that drop off and pick up because their students are there for about 3 hours. I cap off my classes at 12. But right now I'm still a young business, so I have an average of 8 kids in each of my advanced classes as well. So what happens by then, the green button, is that this parking lot is empty by the time my classes are starting. And so the parents are coming in for those older classes, and they'll just file into those parking spaces.
So there's only 12 then that are coming for the class. One class, 12 max. So your parking can act as drop-off because there's plenty of stalls.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that, and I do have 2 studios, so a max of 24, but there are 20 parking spaces between the whole parking lot being empty at that time, since neither of the other businesses are in business hours at that time. But that also takes into account if everyone actually showed up on time, which never has happened, nor probably will it happen. So To this point, the only time there has been any sort of parking issue has been during the business hours, and that's when I keep the classes small and staggered, so that we do have those 8 parking spots, and those are going to the parents and their kids. And my instructors are told to park across the street, on the street, so that all parking spaces are allotted to the parents with their small kids. And then in the evening, people come in, they park in the parking stalls, they drop off, then they back out and leave, and then the same thing happens at the end of the night. And so there is some congestion, but not the congestion that would otherwise be if I was battling for parking spots with the other businesses if they were in hours. But even if the other businesses do change to other businesses, the nice thing about the dance studio model is that the classes can't start until the kids are out of school. And most businesses are 9 to 5 businesses. And so there would only be a 45-minute time where there would be a parking issue. But both of those businesses have been there for 10 years, and neither of them have expressed interest in leaving anytime soon. So I don't foresee it being a problem, at least for the 5 years that my lease is for. Did that answer the questions or concerns?
Thank you. Commissioner Luthi.
So is this conditional use only effective for the 5 years then?
I'm not sure how that works. I have a 5-year lease, but I have no intention of moving after the 5 years because I love the space. I would probably expand to a second location rather than move. So it would be more just a conditional permit to have this be the home of my studio.
I'm just worried that if you do increase in size, now all of a sudden, all these parking things that we've worked out and are great, do they suddenly become a problem? And is there any kind of check?
My studio can't really expand too much more where I am without the quality of instruction going down. And at that point, rather than packing more bodies in this location, I would open a second studio. Because my first priority is the education that the students are receiving. And I would rather have a second location and have more overhead than have a muddied product. Do you know what I'm saying? So I only have 2 additional days that I could add classes in at this point. And then at that point, I would have a waiting list. And when my waiting list got large enough, I would open a second location rather than be too busy. Does that make sense?
Great, thank you. So, Mr. Gardner, does the conditional use permit follow the building, or does it follow the applicant?
No, it's a property. It runs with the property. And
That's right.
I believe that in condition 2, that should give comfort to the planning commission, because if there comes an issue, then we can redress or address the issues based on complaints. If it is a valid complaint and it becomes the nightmare like you were describing in the pre-meeting. And so there is always the opportunity for the city to relook at the conditional use permit if it becomes something that was not expected for the neighborhood, or it becomes detrimental or a safety issue. Staff, we can monitor that if it gets to be, if the complaint's valid. I'm not saying any complaint, all complaints are valid, because they're not, and we would certainly look into it. So I believe that condition of approval is enough to at least, and the applicant is very astute at what she does. She's not, she's answered all the questions, right succinctly and to the point, and not hummed and hawed. Well, I got to figure that out. She knows exactly what's going on. So that's my opinion. So
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Commissioner Quinney.
No, Larry kind of stole my thunder. I was going to say, I think we're satisfied between what's been discussed and what she's thought out, carefully considered. I think is an adequate term there. That the conditions here are going to provide us with the opportunity to review if necessary.
Thank you, Commissioner Sikoski.
Thanks for being organized. I like that. It's nice. It really is. So it's good. I feel like all of my concerns have just kind of floated away with the discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we, based on the information and findings set forth in staff report and upon evidence and explanations received today, I move that the Planning Commission grant the conditional use permit for personal instruction on parcel 2134278.022, addressed 1355 West, 8120 South, Suite 1, with the conditions set forth in the staff report.
Commissioner Quinney.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Sikoski and a second by Commissioner Quinney. Do we have any discussion of that motion? Let's vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously 6-0. Thank you for answering all our questions. We appreciate your patience with us, and thank you for deciding when you relocated to stay in West Jordan. I loved watching the classes through the windows at Gardner Village when I'd take my children there, and I'm grateful.
I'll miss it, but.
That does sound really creepy.
I said the classes, not her.
Watching through the window. It happens
It's
a
a
lot.
big glass fenestration. It's not a peephole. So that got them interested in dance, and so my youngest daughter is dancing now.
That's great.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving right along.
It's funny we all have the same thought.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Item number 5 on the agenda, Ganson Lane Gated Community, 8661 South Redwood Road, conditional use permit to allow for a gated community PRD-H zone with Alpine Homes LLC as the applicant. Is a representative here tonight? Please, if you could state your name for the record and present your application, please.
Yeah, Steve Jackson with Alpine Homes LLC. It's pretty brief. I know we've been here before a couple times on preliminary plat and development plan, and we discussed at that time the possibility of gating the community. A couple reasons for that, just based on what we were looking at in our research. In order to create a community that's going to create more long-term residents, and add an element of security, having a gated community was a desirable benefit for that. Additionally, we've talked with the neighboring Dove Meadows community, and they've expressed their concern as well. If a community moves in next to them that's not gated, that might leave them vulnerable on their western side, where they just only have a vinyl fence at this point. So, combination of those two things led to the discussion to gate the community. Based on the plat plan, or the preliminary plat that we have here, you'll see we meet the engineered plans for a gated community. As you see here, obviously it's a little bit of a turnout. This will be where your mailboxes will be located, be a automated keypad right here to enter the community. This is your ingress and your egress, and obviously a turnout, which people will be able to turn into if somebody forgot their passcode or their clicker wasn't working or something along those lines. It'll allow several cars to kind of stack up and queue over here in this little turnout. So overall, that's the basic gist of it. We're still working through the details of an emergency access point right here that will allow this lot right here in Dove Meadows to be opened up for another developer to sell and build. So we've been working out the details of that, and as of right now, we do have plans to have a emergency access out onto Redwood Road. We're in discussions with the fire department to see if we need both of them or one of them. So we're comfortable either way. So that's just kind of where the plan is at this point. So I'll turn it over to the Planning Commission and answer any questions you guys have.
Great, thank you for your presentation. Any questions for the applicant? None at this point.
Perfect.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner.
I won't belabor the point. The Planning Commission's seen this numerous times. All I can say is the staff recommends approval with the conditions 1 through 10 that are right out of the gated community ordinance. And so staff recommends approval of this.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gardner? Seeing none, we'll open this up to the public. Would anyone like to say anything regarding this gated community? Seeing none there as well, we'll come back to the commission. Anybody have anything to say or a motion? Commissioner Luthi.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Based on the analysis and findings contained in the staff report and upon evidence received today, I move that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit for Ganson Meadows, a gated community on property located at 8661 South Redwood Road, based on the conditions contained in the staff report.
Commissioner Hanson. We have a motion by Commissioner Luthi and a second by Commissioner Hanchen, and discussion of the motion starting with Commissioner Luthi. No? Commissioner Hatch.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. I don't know if it's for city planner or for the applicant. I live in a gated community, and it was mentioned in the pre-meeting, the gate is an enormous hassle. I serve also on that HOA board, and we constantly have the gate company out to service the gate, and it has created a mess in the community. And I don't know what provisions are in place or if it's just a factor of the gate.
Well, what I can tell you is a conditional use permit allows them to have a gate. It doesn't command them to have a gate, so if they get tired of it, they can take the gate down. But it has to be functional to maintain the safety of the, the community. And I don't know if that's what the answer to the question that you're posing is, or there's no way for me to condition a hassle out of something.
I realize that.
But so it just, they've applied to put a gate up, so if this is approved, then they can, according to the conditions of approval. However, if they don't want to have the gate, then that can be removed.
So the street is a public street. It could go without a gate.
The Ganson Meadow, from that point on, from Gardner Lane to the south, is all private street.
Oh, it is a private
Yeah,
street.
we don't put gates on public streets ever.
That's my comment. Thank you.
Oh, good point. Then how house catches on fire? Police department, are they given codes for gates? How do you get in? Sorry, how about fire department? That's what I meant. Police usually don't put out.
Yes, as part of the approval process for that, we have to give approval for them to actually, for the actual gate, and we have a couple of different ways of doing it. We have a knock switch, so we could put in with a special key. We could have them do that, Knox box of some sort, but there are ways that we can have to gain access without a particular code or anything like that. So
just use 911.
Then we would call somebody to respond, and that would be kind of double usage there.
Right.
But yeah, as part of putting a gate in, we would put in measures that would allow us to gain access to it without having somebody to come and open it for us or something like that.
Great. Same thing for police,
Yes.
fire, everything. Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you. Any other comments regarding the motion? Well, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you very much. Last item on our agenda this evening, we have Lone View West rezone, 8174 South, 6540 West, rezone 5.01 acres from R18E to R16E. Peterson Development, LLC. Justin Peterson is the applicant. Please come forward, sir.
My name is Warren Kirk. I'm with Peterson Development. I'm not paid as a Peterson. I'm paid as an employee. And I'm not as good looking as Justin. Members of the commission, I hope that at the end of my presentation, you won't thank me for my presentation, but you'll thank me for my brief comments. You've thanked the last several applicants or acknowledged that they had great presentations. So plain and simple, this is a surplus piece of ground that was acquired after we did the Highlands Master Plan. All of the surrounding ground allows for certain setbacks that allow for a bigger home. We bought this ground and we zoned it not as part of the Highlands, but as an R18. We're asking tonight to downzone it to an R16. Your assurance is that we already have all of the improvements in the ground. The lots are already ready to be sold and be built on. And all we're asking for is a change in the zone so that we can have a bigger home that is compatible to all the other homes in the area that fall within the setbacks of the Highlands Master Plan. So it's just consistent in those three criteria that the staff is recommending this to be a positive thing in this rezone. Hopefully that makes sense. Bigger is better in this situation because we're going to be a bigger home on the same size lot.
No, very good point. When you say down zone or up zone, sometimes people get it different, and we don't know if you mean smaller or bigger. So
We're not changing lot sizes. We're just changing setbacks.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Sikoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only concern is the size of the driveway, and it was, excuse me, staff brought up that from the back of the sidewalk to the garage would be 25 feet. Is that correct?
I think that's correct, which is consistent with all the other area around it.
Yeah, as long as it's that minimum, then I'm fine with that.
Hopefully large enough for a large truck. Which,
right,
okay.
Yeah, just not hanging over the sidewalk. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Nothing at this time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I thought that was a great presentation and brief. And Mr. Gardner, you have this one as well.
I'm not going to add anything. Mr. Kirk did a fine job. So I recommend approval of this. And the setback is 25 feet, and the R18 zone would be 30 feet. So.
Great, thank you. That was even more brief. Briefer? What's the word there? It was the briefest. It was the most brief. Great, so let's open this up to public comment. Would anyone like to talk about this item? Anyone at all? Our attorney hasn't said anything yet. Would you like to say anything? Oh, okay. Good point. Thank you. We will close the public comment section, seeing no takers, and bring it back to the commission with Commissioner Sikoski.
I'm just going to make a motion if everybody's okay with that. Based on the analysis and findings contained in the staff report, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to City Council to rezone 5.01 acres from R18E to R16E zoning, single-family residential, with the E-size home on property located at 8174 South, 6540 West.
Thank you. Commissioner Quinney.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Sikoski, a second by Commissioner Quinney. Any discussion or comment to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously 6-0, and thank you for doing business in West Jordan and representing Justin Peterson. And I think you look just fine. So, great.
What? Saw you through the window of a dance. If you had just money, calling on more.
One more item for this evening is we need to officially designate someone from the Planning Commission to serve as a liaison to the General Plan Commission. And Mr. Gardner, do we have any specificity on the day of the week, the time of day, when it'll start, how long it might go? Do we know when these meetings will be?
Yes, and what I've sent to Heather upstairs and to the city manager is that for the people that have been appointed by the city council, the meeting dates, and as the commission's aware, that we now do land use map amendments quarterly, and that will be at the beginning the primary work of the General Plan Committee. And the times we've come up with is when the Planning Commission would take action on a land use map amendment will always be the second meeting, I believe, is in January, April, July, and one other month, I can't, October or something like that. Yes, and so we would hold the General Plan Committee meeting either before or after the same day as the first Planning Commission meeting. And I'm shooting for before, but I know that that can be problematic with your work schedules and that, so it may end up being after the meeting. It would probably be no more than, I think, a half hour to an hour at the most. And I don't anticipate, but that's all relative based upon the amount of land use map amendments we get over the course of, we've already got, I believe, a couple that will be taking place in January. And so, I would at least say an hour is what it would be. Yeah, if that works with people's work schedule, we can go after, but I would rather do earlier than later, but I'm open to whenever. Yeah.
Okay, and this would be a one-year appointment, calendar year 2018,
Yes,
4
yes.
meetings,
Yes.
quarterly meetings, about 4 hours.
And Nicole will have an orientation meeting for the entire general plan committee. I think it's December 7th or 8th, but I'll get you the information if you in fact are wanting to do that. Oh, Julie, the 5th? Okay. Okay, so it's the 5th, so thank you, Julie.
Saves another travel time. You're just going
Yeah.
from one meeting to another back-to-back.
We'll do it before. And that would be an orientation, and I don't know, it wouldn't be much of an orientation for you because you're already in the process and you understand. It would be for people that haven't. But your input would be helpful also at that meeting to let people know. Great. All right.
And that's a
Thank you.
non-voting advisory
Yes,
liaison
yes.
type opportunity. Well,
Thank
great, thank you. Anyone else have any interest in serving? Anybody want to arm wrestle Commissioner Luthi for it? Sure, then it can't drag on. Well, great, then thank you, Commissioner Luthi, for being willing to serve on that on behalf of the Planning Commission. Commissioner Sikoski.
I move to adjourn.
Any opposition? We stand adjourned until December 5th.
December 5th.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday of the whole year.